Chapter 1: Invisible in Plain Sight. The bell of St. Aldrich Academy rang with its usual sharp chime, echoing through the grand stone hallways lined with tall windows and polished oak floors. Students streamed out of their classrooms, their laughter and chatter filling the corridors. In the middle of the commotion walked Clara Whitmore, head down, shoulders hunched beneath her oversized gray sweater. Her round glasses slipped down her nose as she hugged her books tightly to her chest, as though the stack of worn novels could shield her from the world around her. "Watch it, Whitmore!" A girl with perfect curls and a designer bag brushed past her, bumping her shoulder hard enough to nearly knock her off balance. The girl's friends giggled as they swished down the hall, the sound sharp and cruel. Clara whispered an apology no one cared to hear. She pushed her glasses back up and ducked into a quieter corridor, where the buzz of popularity dimmed into a distant hum. She had grown used to it being invisible. At St. Aldrich, where reputation sparkled like diamonds and beauty was the only currency that mattered, Clara felt like she lived in the shadows. Her only companions were the thick, dog-eared books she carried everywhere. Tales of knights, heroines, and kingdoms far away from her own unremarkable life. And then, like always, he appeared. Adrian Blackwood walked down the center of the hallway like he owned it. His tall frame and striking features commanded attention, but it was his silence that made people hold their breath around him. Dark hair fell neatly across his forehead. His school blazer hung just right on his shoulders, and his unreadable expression only fueled the rumors. "The Cold Prince," the students whispered behind him. Handsome, brilliant, untouchable. Girls dreamed of catching his gaze. Boys admired and envied him in equal measure. But Adrian never gave more than a polite nod. His eyes always seemed distant, as though he were searching for something beyond these walls. Clara's breath caught as he passed her. She dared to glance up, just once. He didn't notice her, he never did. He never noticed anyone unless it was necessary. Still, her heart gave its familiar flutter. How could he? She thought bitterly. Why would someone like Adrian Blackwood ever notice someone like me? From her corner, she watched him walk away, the sunlight from the tall windows catching in his dark eyes for a fleeting moment. Everyone else admired Adrian for his perfection, but Clara saw something else, something lonely, hidden beneath the frost. She adjusted her glasses again and sighed, muttering under her breath, "In another life, maybe." The hallway swallowed her up once more, and the Cold Prince disappeared into the crowd, as unreachable as the stars Clara often read about in her beloved books. Chapter 2: The Invitation. The weekend crept in quietly, carrying with it the soft drizzle of an autumn morning. Clara sat at the small oak desk in her bedroom, lost in a tattered novel. Her sanctuary was a modest room lined with bookshelves that sagged under the weight of well-loved stories. Her phone buzzed against the desk. She hesitated before picking it up, already recognizing the name flashing on the screen. Evelyn Hart, her cousin. "Clara!" Evelyn's voice, bright and urgent, filled the line. "Don't tell me you've forgotten." Clara frowned. "Forgotten what?" "The wedding, silly. Nathaniel and I are tying the knot in 2 weeks, and you must come." Clara's heart sank. She imagined a sea of glittering gowns, chandeliers and champagne flutes, and herself, shrinking in the corner like a misplaced puzzle piece. "Evelyn, I don't think I'll fit in. You know how I am." "Nonsense." Evelyn cut in, laughter ringing like chimes. "You're my cousin, my family, and I won't hear excuses. Nathaniel wants everyone dear to me there. Besides," her voice softened, "I'd like you to stand with me, Clara. I want you close." Clara pressed her lips together. Saying no felt impossible. Evelyn had always been the confident, dazzling one, the kind of woman Clara secretly wished she could be. "All right," Clara murmured. "I'll come." The wedding day arrived with golden sunlight spilling through the tall windows of Evelyn's grand townhouse. The air buzzed with perfume, hairspray, and the excited chatter of bridesmaids bustling around in satin robes. Clara sat stiffly in a chair, hugging her cardigan around her shoulders as makeup brushes and curling irons whirled dangerously close. "Hold still," one of the bridesmaids teased, gently tugging Clara's hair free from its messy braid. "We're about to work magic." "I don't think," Clara started, but her words drowned beneath the hum of a blow-dryer. Hours seemed to melt away in a blur of powders, pins, and laughter. Her plain brown hair was coaxed into glossy waves that tumbled over her shoulders. The heavy glasses that had hidden her eyes for years were replaced with delicate makeup that highlighted their soft hazel glow. And the dress, oh, the dress, was a deep emerald satin, cinched perfectly at her waist, flowing like liquid silk down to her ankles. When they were finished, the bridesmaids stepped back in unison, grinning. "Clara," Evelyn whispered, hand pressed over her mouth. "You look incredible." Clara turned to the mirror. For a heartbeat, she didn't recognize the girl staring back at her. Her cheeks flushed with color, her eyes seemed brighter, and the gown shimmered with each movement. But behind the painted beauty, Clara's stomach twisted. She still felt like the same awkward, invisible girl wrapped in an unfamiliar disguise. "It's still me," she murmured almost to herself. "Isn't it?" Evelyn squeezed her shoulders firmly, anchoring her. "Yes, but it's time the world sees what I've always known, Clara. You're beautiful. You just needed the courage to believe it." Clara swallowed hard, her pulse racing. As laughter and music swelled from the reception hall below, a single thought pulsed in her mind. Tonight, for once, she would no longer be invisible. Chapter 3: A Dance with the Prince. The ballroom of the Heart Cross wedding glittered like a dream. Chandeliers spilled golden light across marble floors, and violins sang a melody that made the air shimmer. Gowns swirled, champagne sparkled, and everywhere laughter bubbled under the vaulted ceiling. Clara lingered on the edges of the celebration, clutching a glass of water she hardly sipped. The emerald dress Evelyn's friends had chosen clung gracefully to her figure, but inside she still felt like a girl hiding behind oversized sweaters. She prayed no one noticed her trembling hands, and then her eyes froze. Across the crowd, tall and striking in a black tailored suit, stood Adrian Blackwood. Clara nearly dropped her glass. "He's here. Of all nights, of all places, Adrian is here." He moved with calm precision, a quiet presence that drew eyes without effort. Guests parted subtly as he passed, whispering his name like he was royalty. Adrian's dark eyes scanned the glittering hall until they found hers. Clara's breath tangled in her throat. She told herself to look away, to disappear into the crowd. But her body betrayed her. She stood still, caught in his gaze like a moth in flame. And then he was before her. "May I?" His hand extended, steady and sure. His voice, low and velvety, seemed to drown out the music around them. Clara stammered, I don't dance well." "Then let me lead." His lips curved, the faintest hint of amusement touching his otherwise cold expression. Before she could protest further, he guided her onto the dance floor. The violins swelled, and Adrian's hand rested firmly on her waist. Clara's heart raced as she tried to follow his steps, but nerves betrayed her. She stumbled, her heel catching awkwardly, and stepped hard onto his polished shoe. "Oh no!" she gasped, mortified. Adrian chuckled, the sound rich and low. "Relax, my shoes have survived worse." Clara blinked at him, stunned by the warmth in his tone. She had never imagined the cold prince could laugh. "I told you I was terrible at this," she murmured, cheeks flaming. "You're not terrible," he said, steadying her effortlessly as they turned. "You're just distracted." Her hazel eyes widened. "Distracted? By me?" Adrian replied smoothly, his gaze locking onto hers. Her knees weakened, and she missed a step again, but this time he caught her, spinning her lightly until her balance returned. The crowd around them blurred into colors and shadows. For Clara, it was as though the entire ballroom had melted away. There was only him, his eyes, and the music that tethered them together. "You're different," Adrian said after a moment, his voice quieter now, thoughtful. "Not like the others here." Clara swallowed hard, her nerves warring with the strange spark that his words ignited. "Different can mean many things. In your case," he murmured, leaning closer, "it's a good thing." Adrian's hand lingered at Clara's waist as the music faded, his touch steady and sure. He bent slightly, lowering his voice to a velvet murmur meant only for her. "It's too loud here," he said, eyes glinting. "Come with me." Before Clara could think of an excuse, he gently slid his fingers along hers, weaving their hands together as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His grip was warm, secure, and she followed without resistance, her heart pounding with every step. The grand ballroom doors creaked open, and they slipped outside into the cool embrace of night. The garden was transformed by moonlight. Lanterns hung from wrought iron arches, casting soft glows across the stone paths. Roses, heavy with dew, perfumed the air, and beyond the manicured hedges stretched a wide, starlit sky. The noise of the reception melted into a faint, distant hum. Adrian didn't let go of her hand. He stood beside her in the quiet, his gaze lifting to the stars. "Finally," he said softly, "it feels like we can breathe." Clara's chest tightened. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had said something so simple, yet made her feel as though the words were meant only for her. "It is peaceful," she admitted, her voice unsteady. Like the whole world slowed down. He turned his head, watching her instead of the sky. "You like peace, don't you?" She blinked at him, startled. "What makes you say that? You carry yourself like someone who doesn't need the crowd, the noise." His thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles, unthinking, as if he had forgotten he still held her hand. "You look like someone who finds her world in quieter places." Clara's lips parted, a confession trembling there. "Books," she said finally, almost in a whisper. "I find it in books, in history, in stories from people long gone. It feels like they're still here, speaking through the pages, waiting to be remembered." Adrian's eyes darkened, not with coldness but with something far more dangerous, fascination. He stepped closer, their joined hands now between them. "That's not how most people talk about books," he said. "Most people read to pass time. You read to live." Clara swallowed, her hazel eyes darting from his gaze to the moonlit roses around them. "History tells us who we were, and maybe who we could be. Don't you ever feel like we're just walking in someone else's footsteps?" For a long moment, Adrian was silent. His aloof mask seemed to waver in the glow of the lanterns. Then, quietly, he said, "More often than you'd think." The words hung in the air, threaded with a strange intimacy. Clara's pulse raced. The garden, the night, the stars. It was all too much, too beautiful. Adrian tilted his head, still studying her as though she were a puzzle he couldn't wait to solve. "You're different," he said again, firmer this time. "I've never met someone who sees the world the way you do." Clara's breath caught, heat rushing to her cheeks. She wanted to tell him everything. Her name, her world, the truth that she was no stranger at all. But fear rooted her in place. Fear that the magic would shatter the moment he realized she was just Clara Whitmore, the invisible girl he'd never once noticed in the halls of St. Aldrich Academy. And so she said nothing. She only smiled faintly and let him hold her hand beneath the stars. For Adrian Blackwood, the cold prince of St. Aldrich, it was the first time in years he felt the ice around his heart crack, and it was because of the girl in the garden. The night wrapped around them like a secret. Clara's pulse slowed into the rhythm of Adrian's quiet breathing, their hands still linked as though the world had forgotten to separate them. The hush of the garden felt sacred, every lantern glow painting their faces in soft gold. Adrian tilted his head slightly, his dark eyes searching hers. "I don't even know your name," he said, voice low, earnest. Clara's lips parted. The word, Clara, hovered on the edge of her tongue. But just as she drew in breath, her phone buzzed sharply in her clutch. The spell cracked like glass. Startled, she pulled her hand free to fumble for it. "Hello?" she whispered, turning her face away. "Sweetheart, where are you?" It was her mother's voice, warm but insistent. "We're leaving now. The driver is waiting." Clara's heart sank. She turned slightly, casting a guilty glance at Adrian, who watched her with quiet intensity. She lowered her voice further, hoping he couldn't hear. I'm coming, Mom. I'll be right there." Her mother's voice softened. "Hurry, darling." Then the line went dead. Clara tucked the phone back into her clutch, her hands trembling. Adrian took a small step toward her. "You have to go?" His words were calm, but there was something in his tone, a thread of disappointment he couldn't quite hide. Clara nodded, her throat too tight to speak. He reached slightly forward, as though to stop her retreat. "At least, let me have your number." Her chest tightened. She wanted to. Oh, she wanted to give him her number, her name, her everything. But fear gripped her. Fear that once the mask fell, he would see only the invisible girl he'd never noticed. She stammered, then stepped back quickly. "I'm sorry, I can't." Before he could respond, she turned and slipped away down the lantern-lit path, emerald skirts whispering against the stone. She didn't dare look back. Adrian remained in the garden, the night air cool around him. The echoes of laughter and music drifted faintly from the ballroom, but none of it reached him. His eyes stayed fixed on the path where she had vanished, his hands still half raised as if reaching for her. For the first time in years, Adrian Blackwood felt something shift inside his carefully guarded heart. The mysterious girl had slipped away without leaving a name, a number, nothing but the memory of her eyes beneath the stars. And he knew, with unsettling certainty, that he wasn't going to forget her. Chapter 4. Back to reality. The magic of the wedding night faded like morning mist. By Monday, Clara Whitmore was back in her uniform. An oversized gray sweater, skirt a little too long, glasses slipping down her nose. The halls of St. Aldrich Academy buzzed as always, a hive of chatter and polished shoes clacking against the tiles. Clara kept her head low as she made her way through the crowd. She was once again invisible, swallowed by the noise of prettier girls with glossy hair and boys with confident laughter. The emerald gown, the lantern-lit garden, Adrian's hand in hers. It all felt like a dream she wasn't allowed to keep. Her classmates didn't notice her. They never did, except when they needed someone to shove past or laugh at. She sighed, adjusting the heavy books in her arms. Back to reality, Clara, she thought bitterly. The invisible girl always wakes up. Adrian Blackwood walked into the corridor, and just like always, the air shifted. Girls straightened their posture, fixing their hair, their eyes following him like sunflowers to the sun. Boys whispered, nodding with envy or admiration. Adrian barely reacted. His stride was smooth, his expression unreadable. The cold prince wrapped in his armor of indifference. No one dared approach too closely, yet everyone longed for his attention. Clara tried not to look at him. She pressed closer to the lockers, hugging her books tighter. But fate, as ever, was cruel. Her shoulder brushed against his arm. The impact jolted her, and she stumbled, nearly dropping everything she carried. Adrian caught a book before it slipped from her grasp. Their eyes met. Clara's breath froze. Adrian's dark gaze lingered for half a beat longer than necessary before he handed the book back. "Careful," he said, his voice calm but softer than she expected. Thank you," she whispered, cheeks flaming. She scurried off before her knees could betray her. But Adrian's eyes followed her retreating figure, faint curiosity stirring where usually there was only cold distance. Later that week, Clara slipped into the library, her favorite sanctuary. Dusty shelves and quiet corners were safer than any crowded hallway. She reached up to grab a copy of The Fall of Rome, only to have her hand collide with another reaching for the exact same spine. Her heart skipped. Adrian stood beside her, tall and composed, his fingers brushing lightly against hers. Clara jerked her hand back. "Oh, sorry. I didn't know. You read this?" he asked, studying her, his voice low, tinged with surprise. "Yes," she said quickly, then realized she sounded defensive. I like history." Adrian paused, then nodded once, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Most people wouldn't." Clara hugged the book to her chest, flustered. "History has lessons. If you listen, the past tells you everything about who we are." For the faintest moment, Adrian's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but something softer. He let her take the book. "Interesting," he murmured almost to himself before walking away. Clara stood frozen, clutching the worn cover, her cheeks warm with confusion. The real turning point came during literature class. Their teacher, Mrs. Ashbourne, announced with a clap, "Group projects. 2 weeks. Choose wisely." Before Clara could quietly pair up with another overlooked classmate, Mrs. Ashbourne's sharp voice rang out, "Whitmore, Blackwood, you two will work together." The classroom buzzed with whispers. Adrian Blackwood and Clara Whitmore, an odd pair no one would have imagined. Clara's heart plummeted. She could feel every eye on her, most filled with disbelief, some with malice. She adjusted her glasses nervously as Adrian turned his head toward her. His gaze held hers for a moment, cool, unreadable, but beneath it, perhaps, the smallest flicker of intrigue. "Looks like we're partners," he said evenly. Clara nodded quickly, her voice barely a whisper. I guess so." And though she tried to convince herself that nothing would come of it, a spark lit inside her chest. A dangerous, foolish spark. Because for the first time in her life, Clara Whitmore wasn't invisible to Adrian Blackwood. Chapter 5, Growing Closer. The days that followed were filled with whispered questions and lingering stares. Everyone at St. Aldrich wanted to know why Adrian Blackwood, the untouchable prince of the school, was partnered with Clara Whitmore, the invisible girl. For Clara, the thought of working alongside him filled her with equal parts dread and excitement. She told herself to keep her head down, do the work, and avoid unnecessary conversation. But fate, as always, had other plans. The first afternoon they met for their project, Clara arrived at the library early, books already stacked neatly on the table. She adjusted her glasses nervously as Adrian walked in, tall and composed, carrying only a notebook and a fountain pen. "You came prepared," he remarked, sliding into the seat across from her. Clara flushed. "I like to be thorough." "Good," he said simply, opening his notebook. "So do I." For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the turning of pages. Clara forced herself to focus on the assignment, a comparative analysis of classical and modern literature. But the awareness of Adrian's presence pressed on her like sunlight too bright to ignore. It was Adrian who broke the silence. "You know," he said, eyes flicking toward her, "most people think history and literature are boring. You don't." Clara blinked. "Why does it matter what most people think?" His lips curved barely, but it was there. "Exactly." What began as quiet work sessions slowly shifted into conversations that stretched past the assignment. Adrian discovered that Clara's laughter, soft and unassuming, had a way of sneaking past his carefully built walls. When she described her favorite historical novels with animated hands, her hazel eyes lighting up, he found himself listening, not out of politeness, but genuine curiosity. One afternoon, he leaned back in his chair, studying her as she rambled about an obscure Roman poet. "You're different, Whitmore." Clara froze, unsure whether to be flattered or offended. "Different how?" "Everyone else?" He paused, searching for the words. "They try too hard to impress. You don't. You just are." Clara's cheeks warmed, and she quickly buried her face in a book to hide her smile. Their project sessions spilled beyond the library, hushed conversations over coffee at the campus cafe, walking side by side down quiet streets, even late-night texts about quotes and ideas. Clara was startled by how easy it was to talk to him, how the cold prince wasn't cold at all when he was with her. But with every step closer, Clara's heart ached, because she knew something Adrian didn't, that the mysterious girl he'd fallen for at Evelyn's wedding was standing right in front of him. She remembered the way he had looked at her in the garden, his eyes soft beneath the stars, his voice murmuring that she was different. He hadn't recognized her then, and if she told him now, if he realized she was the same girl he had danced with, the same girl who had fled before he could even know her name, what would happen? Would he feel betrayed? Would he turn cold again? Clara kept the secret locked in her chest, even as her feelings grew stronger. Each smile he gave her, each moment of laughter they shared, pulled her deeper into dangerous waters. She told herself she wouldn't fall. She told herself it was impossible. But late at night, staring at her phone after their conversations, Clara knew the truth. She had already fallen. Chapter 6: Whispers and Wounds. By now, the entire school had noticed it. Adrian Blackwood, the cold prince of St. Aldrich, was spending too much time near Clara Whitmore. It didn't take long for admiration to sour into jealousy. Girls whispered behind manicured hands, their voices sharp and cruel. Boys laughed, nudging one another, as if it were a grand joke. Adrian Blackwood and Clara Whitmore? Impossible. The cruelty came in waves. Clara's books accidentally knocked from her arms. Her seat in the cafeteria claimed before she could set down her tray. Rumors spread like wildfire, ugly things whispered in bathrooms and locker rooms. And one afternoon, the storm finally broke. Clara was cornered near the stairwell, her back against cold stone as three girls in pressed blazers blocked her way. Their smiles were sweet, but their words cut like knives. "So," one of them drawled, twirling a strand of perfectly curled hair, "what's your secret, Whitmore? Why is Adrian wasting his time with you?" Clara's throat tightened. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Another girl leaned in closer, eyes narrowing. "Is he your boyfriend now? Is that what this is?" The group giggled, the sound echoing cruelly. Clara pressed tighter against the wall, her books clutched like a shield. "Enough!" The words sliced through the air. The girls froze, turning. Adrian Blackwood stood at the top of the stairwell, his dark eyes colder than ice. He descended slowly, each step measured, his presence heavier than silence itself. "Adrian," one girl began, her voice faltering. He stopped in front of Clara, placing himself between her and the group. His height, his calm fury, made the bullies shrink. "She asked you a question," one of them said weakly, trying to save face. "Is she your girlfriend? Is that why you're defending her?" Adrian's gaze sharpened. "I don't need to be someone's boyfriend to act human." His voice was low, deliberate. Then he glanced back at Clara, his tone softening just slightly. "She's a human too." The hallway fell silent. The girls flushed, exchanging nervous glances. One muttered something under her breath, and then, like smoke, they disappeared. Clara stood frozen, her heart pounding. She should have felt grateful. Adrian had defended her when no one else ever had. But his words, "She's a human too." Her chest ached. Was that all she was to him? Just a human worth basic decency? Nothing more? "Are you all right?" Adrian asked, turning toward her now, his face unreadable. Clara forced a small nod, though her voice betrayed her. Yes, thank you." He gave a short nod in return, then walked away, leaving her trembling in the stairwell. Clara pressed her back against the wall, eyes stinging. She didn't know whether to be touched by his action or wounded by his words, because Adrian Blackwood, the boy who haunted her dreams, had just reminded her of the truth she feared most. She was nothing special, just human. Chapter 7: The Truth in the Photos. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Adrian found himself at the Hart household. His mother and Evelyn's parents were close friends, and gatherings like these were common. Long tables of food, laughter spilling from the kitchen, adults catching up while the younger ones drifted between rooms. Adrian kept to himself, as he often did. He lingered in the living room, scrolling absently through his phone, but his mind wasn't on the chatter around him. It was elsewhere, on a girl in emerald satin who had vanished before he even knew her name. Her laugh haunted him. Her words about history, about listening to the past, they echoed in his chest late at night, when the world was quiet. And then there was Clara Whitmore, his groupmate, who somehow stirred the same feeling. He told himself it couldn't be, but the thought gnawed at him endlessly. Nathaniel Cross plopped onto the sofa beside him, cheerful as always. "You look like you're solving the mysteries of the universe, mate." Adrian shook his head lightly. "Just thinking." "About who?" Nathaniel teased. "Because you've been brooding since the wedding. Evelyn said you disappeared into the garden for half an hour." Adrian hesitated, his pride tugging him back. But the memory of hazel eyes under lantern light pressed him forward. There was someone at the wedding. Nathaniel's brows shot up. "Oh?" Finally, the Ice Prince noticed a girl. Adrian ignored the jab, his voice steady. "Green dress, long hair. She left before I could ask her name." Nathaniel thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "Wait, you might find her in the photo booth pictures. Evelyn uploaded them all on Facebook." He pulled out his phone. "Here, let's check." Adrian leaned closer, trying to mask the rush of anticipation pounding in his veins. Together they scrolled through rows of goofy, smiling photos. Kids with feather boas, old uncles in ridiculous hats, Evelyn radiant in her gown, her friends crowding the frame. Adrian's eyes scanned each face with restless urgency. "Where is she? What are you two plotting over there?" Evelyn's voice chimed as she drifted into the room. Her gown exchanged for a simple dress, her hair loose now. She slid onto the arm of the couch, peering at Nathaniel's phone. "Adrian's looking for a girl from the wedding," Nathaniel said with a grin. "Mysterious stranger. Green dress. Ring any bells?" Evelyn arched a brow, clearly amused. "Adrian Blackwood, interested in a girl? This I have to see." She leaned in as Nathaniel kept scrolling, until Adrian suddenly froze. His breath caught, his hand tightening on the edge of the phone. There she was. A photo of Evelyn, arm in arm with another girl, hazel eyes bright, hair flowing in glossy waves, emerald dress catching the light. Her smile was shy but radiant, the kind of smile that lived in his memory long after it was gone. Adrian's world stilled. It was her. The girl from the dance, from the garden, from his thoughts every night since. "Ah!" Evelyn exclaimed, tapping the screen with a grin. "That's my cousin, Clara. Clara Whitmore." The name landed like a thunderclap. Adrian felt the ground shift beneath him. Clara Whitmore, the quiet girl who hid behind sweaters and glasses, the one he'd partnered with in class, the one who laughed softly over history books. She was the same girl who had stolen his breath away under the lanterns. His chest tightened painfully. Shame and awe tangled in equal measure. How had he not seen her before? How could he have walked past her every day, blind to the fire hidden beneath the gray? Nathaniel chuckled, oblivious to Adrian's storm. "Well, mystery solved. You already know her, don't you?" But Adrian couldn't answer. His throat burned with unspoken words, his heart pounding in a way he couldn't control. It was Clara, always Clara, the girl he had ignored, the girl who made him laugh, the girl who had danced with him beneath the stars. For the first time in years, Adrian Blackwood felt his icy composure shatter completely. And all he could think was, I can't lose her again. Chapter 8, Confession in the Hallway. Clara Whitmore was cornered again, her back pressed against the lockers, her books scattered across the floor like broken shields. The three girls stood over her, their eyes glittering with malice. Still pretending, Whitmore? One of them hissed. Still acting like Adrian actually cares? Another leaned closer, her perfume cloying. Tell us the truth. Are you his girlfriend? Is that why he keeps hanging around you? The third girl smirked, her words sharp as knives. Or are you just his little project? Laughter erupted, cruel and shrill. Clara bent to gather her books, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold them. Heat rose to her cheeks, her throat burned. Don't cry, she begged herself. Don't give them the satisfaction. But the tears brimmed anyway. And then the air shifted. A low, steady voice cut through the noise. Say that again. The laughter died instantly. The girls stiffened, turning slowly. Adrian Blackwood stood at the other end of the hallway. His blazer unbuttoned, his tie loose, his dark eyes burned with a fury no one had ever seen before. He strode toward them, each step echoing like thunder against the tiles. The crowd that had gathered parted instinctively, silence sweeping over the corridor. He stopped in front of Clara, his tall frame shielding her from the bullies. His jaw was tight, his voice sharp as ice. You think mocking someone makes you powerful? His gaze sliced through the girls. You think tearing her down makes you worth something? One of them stammered. We were just joking. Joking? Adrian's voice rose, raw and commanding. Does this look like a joke to you? He gestured at Clara, her arms full of scattered books, her eyes wet with unshed tears. The girls shrank back, but one tried again. Then why do you care, Adrian? You're not his boyfriend, remember? The hall held its breath. Adrian's jaw flexed. His voice dropped, low and unshakable. Yes, I'm not. He turned his head slightly, his eyes softening as they landed on Clara. Yet, a hush fell over the crowd. Clara's heart stopped. Adrian took her trembling hand, lacing his fingers with hers in front of everyone. His voice carried, clear and fierce. You don't need to hide anymore. You're the girl I've been looking for at the wedding and here. It was always you, Clara. Her name fell from his lips like a promise, breaking through the walls she had built around herself. Clara's chest tightened, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. The bullies gaped, their mouths open but no words coming. Around them, students stared, stunned into silence. But Clara saw none of it. Only him, Adrian Blackwood, the cold prince who once never looked her way, was standing before her, unguarded, his hand warm in hers. I like you, said Adrian in the most sincere way. Adrian. Her voice cracked. Why me? His gaze never wavered. Because you're not invisible. Not to me. You never were. The tears that fell now were not from pain but from release. Years of being overlooked, ignored, belittled. All undone by the truth in his voice. Clara smiled through her tears, her grip tightening around his hand. For the first time in her life she was seen. Together, they turned from the stunned crowd and walked down the corridor, side by side. No longer the invisible girl Dot. No longer the cold prince. Just Adrian and Clara. And the world could do nothing but watch.